Hi, I'm Kevin from Vantage. Here in our series of Essential English videos, we've been talking about presentations. In the first one, opening a presentation, very important. And then linking the presentation, the various parts of your speech together. Today, in this video, we're going to be talking about closing your presentation. The best speakers end their presentations with something exciting, something uplifting, something inspiring. In the 2007 iPhone launch, Steve Jobs ended his presentation by saying, "I didn't sleep a wink last night. I was so excited about today." The best presentations educate, inform, and inspire. So can yours. We're going to show you how in this video. Your presentation can end with a summary or a conclusion, or both. So what's the difference? A summary is a recap of the main points. A conclusion is a result based upon the information you provided. We'll look at the language of how you can end with either of these type of endings. Closing a presentation, the call to action. A conclusion often consists of a recommendation or a call to action. No matter how good your presentation is, a lackluster ending will significantly detract from your ability to influence others. The conclusion of your speech is your last chance to hammer home the importance of your message. The call to action gives your audience a sense of purpose, something to take away from the presentation. So do this last, because it will be what they remember most. Here's some tips about ending your presentation. First of all, never end with your Q&A session. Q&A or question and answer session. Why? Because you may get a hostile question. You don't want it to end on a bad note. You want to take back control of your presentation and end it with a high note. So your Q&A session is near the end, but not at the end. Often people just project a thank you slide as their last slide. That's okay. You need to say thank you, but you're much better presenting a slide that has a summary of your main points or your contact information. And the last tip I want to give you is to let your audience know the presentation is over. This is where thank you is important and should be said. Closing your presentation, signposting the end. In a traditional presentation model where you're taking questions at near the end, you will need to signal the end of your Q&A session before moving on to the close. Here are some good ways to do that. Examples: if there are no more questions, I'd like to. Thank you for your questions. Now let me. Making recommendations and calls to action. We can use modal verbs must, need to, have to, and should. Here are some examples. We must ensure that all visitors are escorted while inside the factory. We need to improve our call response time. We have to implement these changes as soon as possible. You should arrange a project team meeting weekly. Calls to action. We can also use imperatives for calls to action. The imperative is the same as the infinitive form of the verb without to. Examples: choose the best partner for your business. Choose us. Contact us today to find out how we can help you. We can also use the first conditional for calls to actions. Examples: if you do that, then this will happen. An example sentence: if you train your sales managers in presentation skills, your productivity can be increased by as much as 30%. There are many ways to end a presentation. This will vary depending on the presenter, the topic, and the audience itself. Here are 9 ways in which you can end your presentation. Summarize the key points. Choose 3 or 4 points only from the presentation and reiterate them. Ensure that the main points are communicated and that your audience is walking away with the key information that you intended to convey. Two, echo the core message. Repeating a theme that was mentioned in your introduction can create a powerful conclusion. To the audience, it can feel like your speaker is coming full circle and will signal to them that the presentation is concluding. Here's some ways to do this. Give your presentation a memorial title and then use the title to conclude the speech. Set up a question during the introduction and finish your speech by answering it. 3. Present a call to action. Provide your audience with clear, specific actions to take now that they are armed with the information from your presentation. Calls to action should include strong power verbs. 4. Use a powerful quote. The key to choosing an effective quote to conclude your presentation is to find one that's a little bit more obscure. Be sure to choose a quote that relates to your theme of your presentation and will resonate with your audience. 5. Ask a rhetorical question. Leaving the audience with a thought-provoking question is a great way to ensure that they will continue to think about your presentation long after it's concluded. Make sure that the question applies to the topics covered. Your audience will leave thinking about the possibilities and opportunities. 6. Tell a story. Tales can bolster a speech's ending. Some tips for using a story to conclude a presentation. Make sure the story is brief and that it relates to the main points of your presentation. Make sure your story encourages empathy from your audience. 7. Give a visual image. Providing a powerful visual can have a lasting impression on your audience. Leave the image up even after you've concluded your presentation to give your audience more time to think about it and the points you've made. 8. Use a short but powerful sentence. Leaving an audience with a memorable statement that will impress them and grab their attention. One way to do this is to utilize the power of 3. Combining information into groups of 3 makes it more rhythmic and memorable for your audience. For example, Julius Caesar used this method when he said, "I came, I saw, I conquered." 9. Make them laugh. Depending on your subject matter, closing out a presentation with a joke can be a great way to drive home a point and leave your audience with something to remember. Just be sure to choose a joke that will echo the main point of your presentation. Finally, I thought I'd leave you some example closing sentences that you can use in your next presentation. Here they are. That brings us to the end of the presentation. I'd like to summarize by saying, that concludes my presentation. However, I'd like to quickly summarize the main points or takeaways. And on that final note, that concludes my presentation. To quickly recap, I'd like you to remember these key points. To summarize, in conclusion, I'd like to bring this presentation to a close with, I'd like to close this talk with. So this concludes the focus of our discussion today. To end, I'd like to highlight, if you practice those endings, you'll make a great conclusion to your presentation. Remember, they should walk out inspired and ready to take action on your main points. Thank you very much for watching.